Hey, it's Tess, content creator, model, presenter, and host of the Tess Talks podcast, on a mission to ignite curiosity. Hey guys, welcome back to a new year of Tess Talks. I am so excited to be back in the studio and recording for you guys. And I know I've said it before, but this year we have some really cool, inspirational, informative, motivational guests lined up. I am so excited to share them with you. I'm coming back into the studio feeling really recharged and reignited after a wonderful break with my family and loved ones. I took some well-needed time off social media to be super present and refocus. And I just feel like it's exactly what my body was needing from me. So I hope you guys have come back feeling rejuvenated and excited for a new year ahead. And what better way to kickstart this year with Dr. Steven Liu. Now, Dr. Steven, in my opinion, is one of the forerunners when it comes to changing the conversation about longevity and preventative health in Australia. Now, I know we've all wondered similar questions at different times. Am I truly healthy? Am I at risk of disease? How could I determine my disease risk factors before it's too late? Can I reverse damage that I've done to my body? Something I think we all ask after the silly season. And what about our parents and our grandparents? If they've had something, does that mean necessarily that I am going to get the same thing? Steven is a GP turned entrepreneur with over 15 years working across ICU, surgery, cardiology, and general practice. So he's seen exactly where our health system shines and where it misses the mark. After years in hospitals, including during the height of the COVID pandemic, Steven realized something pretty confronting. Most of the serious illnesses he was treating could probably have been picked up years earlier and prevented. Now he's the co-founder and chief medical officer of Everlab, using advanced testing, imaging, biomarkers, and AI to help people understand their health risks before symptoms show up, not after. So today we're talking about what actually predicts how well we're aging, why things like muscle and bone health matter way more than we actually realize, especially for women, and why normal blood results can be wildly misleading, and how personalized prevention can really change everything. We're diving into heart health, hormones, stress, genetics, biohacking, and how to cut through the noise and focus on what really moves the needle. I think this is so important. I know that we are fed so much information these days, and I'm doing my best to try and consolidate everything for you guys so you can implement it and start seeing changes today. If you stick around to the end, Steven shares some pretty sobering stats about aging and disease, but put in the simplest of terms, you can do things now that have the biggest long-term payoff. This episode isn't about fear or perfection. It's about clarity, empowerment, and building a longer, stronger, and healthier life. So let's get curious. I'm so big on preventative health. I'm talking to the converted, but I just think it is such a huge space. And I feel like, unfortunately, Australia, we're often a little bit behind in these things. I feel like there is so much that's like accessible in the States. We travel there a lot. We just got married there. Yeah. But I just feel like with a lot of these things, Australia, it takes time for us to catch up. And I feel like you are really at the forefront of bringing this to Australia and making it accessible and trying to get Australia wide. And I just think it's epic, absolutely epic, changing the future.
Well, it's not just Australia, actually, right? So Australia actually has a pretty good health system, but sometimes having what is considered a conventionally good health system actually holds you back, right, from changing. And you have to see where the opportunities are to deliver more. Because if the health system was working great, we wouldn't have to focus on prevent health so much. But,
so true.
Yeah.
That's actually such a good way to look at it. I'm curious to know how you see people's mindset around it and how much you've seen a shift. Because I mean, for me, I grew up with the mentality driven into me because my dad was very into preventative health from an early age for himself. So back in the 70s and 80s, he was doing juice fasts and health retreats and all these things. But he would always say that I'm building future credits for the future longevity of my health. And he raised me with that kind of mentality. So I started thinking about preventative health from a really, really early age. But I think in the conversation in our society, it's only now really becoming a really spoken about topic.
So it's a little bit generational for you then.
It
right?
is,
So
yeah.
that's quite forward thinking.
Yeah, very lucky
And
to have that.
there's some particular themes of that, right? So the reason why I say dad's forward thinking is because he's actually thinking about health more so than illness. So we have a health system we call it a health system. It's actually a sick care system, right? So, and we do that very well. We have to be fair. Australia actually has a very good health system. But it's not so much health that we're focused on, it's actually illness. So when you have an illness, we can treat it. And people would sometimes equate not being sick to being healthy. That's actually not the case, right? Like we actually have to start with, if you want to think about healthcare, you have to start by redefining health. So I think dad probably had this idea of like, I can picture what health is. Health is more than just not having illnesses. It's more than just not having diabetes, heart disease, and cancers and whatnot. And the good thing about what we're seeing is also people are much better informed. Information and knowledge is much more democratized. And I think that's a great thing. People are listening to podcasts or reading books or following doctors on YouTube, and they might be asking GPT. And it allows us to actually, have these thoughts to say, like, what more can we do? So I think that's the wind in our sails in terms of why Everlab's been able to be very successful, because we are engaging people at like meeting them halfway. And that's been so great. I think otherwise it's just me on a crusade, right? To say like we absolutely need to redefine how we approach healthcare and redefine how we approach health.
I love that so much. So you obviously have a very extensive career in medicine and healthcare. What first got you curious into preventative health?
What first got me curious into preventative health? It wasn't like one day a light bulb went off and I was like, this is it. It was a cumulative experience. So I've been a doctor for more than 15 years now, and the typical career of a doctor in Australia is you finish medical school, you would work in a hospital. And that's exactly what I did. So I started my career in hospital. I worked in all the exciting fields, right? Neurosurgery, cardiothoracic surgery. I did advanced training in intensive care, I absolutely love that.
Wow.
And it's a deeply gratifying job, especially as a young doctor, right? You feel like one of these doctors on doctor TV shows. Yeah. You come in, you save the day, you resolve these crises. But then as time goes on, I think the excitement dies down a little bit, and you need to start thinking a little bit more and meditate more on, well, what outcomes are we delivering and how do we define success? Because in intensive care, success is you don't die on my watch, and that's success. And if you're on the ward, the way we define success is we work out what's wrong with you and we get you home. If you go to emergency, the way we define success is we get you out of emergency within 4 hours. Either you go into the ward or you go home. But we actually need to be much more patient-centric, which is that what is success for this person? And it's actually to never come here, right? The success is never having to see the inside of a cardiac theater or an intensive care unit. And once you get bitten by that bug, I think I just started seeing it everywhere. It's like, you start seeing behind the matrix, you see all the code, and you're like, whoa, like all of a sudden, I was running a ward of, intensive care patients. Most of these folks, if we got it right beforehand, you didn't need to come here. Wow.
So what would be like some of the blind spots you started seeing where like specific cases that you were like, this is so preventable?
I would say like 80-90% of cases are all preventable, whether you come into the intensive care or you come into a hospital as a ward or you come into emergency department. It's different if you're going to cut your hand or have appendicitis, but most of these cases are a consequence of chronic disease processes that have no symptoms until they surface. And this is actually one of the big blind spots, which is as a society, because our care systems is built around illness, we have this sense that the absence of symptoms equals an absence of problems. Whereas in fact, symptoms is usually the last manifestation of an illness. And I think that's something that we miss. So the cardiac diseases, the metabolic diseases, the diabetes, just general suboptimal health, the inflammations. When I was in intensive care, every winter we would have folks come in and they would die from influenza. And we think, like influenza, very dangerous. It can make you very ill, but the people who get influenza and die from it do not die from the influenza itself. It surfaces the underlying problems that were asymptomatic before. I remember these cases. I can still picture their faces. They have influenza. It's like forcing the body to go on a stress test that they can't stop.
I have never heard a qualified doctor say that. I feel like the messaging is always very like influenza kills, and it was the same around COVID. And I don't know what your experience was working in hospitals during that time, but I feel like it was, from my understanding, a very similar thing. People who were getting severely ill and being put on ventilators often had underlying conditions of other things.
Yeah. So by the time COVID happened, I was already I was already qualified as a specialist GP. So I was working in the community. But interestingly, I was actually working for the Department of Health in Victoria.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I was part of the COVID-19 response team. So really, really interesting time.
Oh my God. What can you tell us about that experience?
Look, I think it's pretty surreal. Like I think for everyone, we all got moved in front of a screen rather than being in person. I think a lot of my colleagues in hospital really copped it really, really tough. Intensive care obviously changed. The wards changed. And COVID-19 is basically the world's biggest stress test. It did disproportionately affect certain groups of folks who weren't necessarily ill. So like pregnant women were disproportionately getting sicker. And that was very frightening. There was a lot of discussion around, the safety of vaccines. The vaccines overall were very safe and they did save lives, but there were some things that again, in retrospect, like hindsight's 2020, personally, I don't really agree with the very draconian approach, but this is also fairly unprecedented. So I think the folks who were making decisions they wanted to do good. At least I like to believe so. But the way we approached it has actually caused a lot of downstream effects. So, kids wearing masks and not be able to interpret feelings and emotions and seeing people's expressions and, schools and whatnot. But by and large, it was disproportionately dangerous to people who were not healthy. And a lot of folks who said, I think I am healthy. Well, actually, you don't have symptoms and you're not actively sick by conventional definitions, but that doesn't mean you are well. So the folks who were well, so if you look at the places that had the highest COVID-19 mortality, it's often places with a lot of chronic disease and older folks. Older folks generally have more chronic disease, whether they're surfaced or not. It's like my patients every year in ICU with influenza, right? So you die from the heart failures because your heart wasn't great before. You die from the heart attacks because you already had a silent blockage that you didn't know about. You die from the metabolic disease because you were already on the brink of diabetes or you had diabetes. The obesity, right? The frailty as well. So they're all things that, ended up surfacing.
Do you feel like this mentality is more generally accepted now, or do you feel like it's still trying to be shifted?
I think it is. The mentality is shifting more towards one of, I would call it reason, right? I think you just need to interpret these things in a more sensible way. And I think that's good. We always need to learn, right? We need to learn from data. We need to learn from history. And just like at Everlab, we learn from the individual person, but also we learn from the broader science and broader data, like things that are published and what's new, and bringing together not just your traditional medicine, but also wellness, right? So what are the most powerful things that a person can do, not just to not be sick, but also to be healthy, right? And how do we define wellness? Which is, at Everlab, we would define wellness as number one, not having any disease processes. Two is optimization. So are you functionally optimized? And it's not just are my kidneys functioning well? Is my liver functioning well? Is my brain functioning well? But also your physical body, your skin, your mood, your cognition, your mental health, all the things that we actually need to thrive in life. And then there's a third bucket, which is performance. So how can we harness your function to optimize your performance, because Everlab's mission is actually how do we deliver the most health span, not just longevity, but health span to as many people as possible. And what's the point of that, right? It's so that you can actualize in your own life. So different people have different values. Some might work on their careers. Some might want to work on family or fall pregnant. Some people might need to look after their family, or some people might want to, one of our members, his goals is I want to be able to swim 5 kilometers in the open ocean, right? Everyone has different goals. Like what's the point of being healthy? It's not just to pack, years into your life. It's to pack the life that you want into the years that you have. So if you see it through that sort of lens, it's really important to be very personalized, and you have to focus on more than, you're not sick, then like thumbs up. Well, no, actually, you're not sick. That's the basics.
Because we're living longer now, but we're living sicker in our last years.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah. So pretty sobering stats.
Yeah.
So we've never really lived as long as we have. Like, by the way, in Australia, the life expectancy is actually starting to plateau.
Oh, okay.
So we live quite long, but like for the first time, it actually went back a little bit.
Really?
In part because of COVID.
Yeah.
As well. But I think we're getting there. I think we will live longer and longer, but you're right, Tess, we've never lived so long, such a big proportion of our lives in poor health, which is a diminishing function. People who are very frail. One of my patients actually told me a story. One of my Everlab patients told me a story where he went to the beach and he saw this lady who wanted to enjoy the beach. So she's like probably a little bit older. So she walks down the steps onto the beach and she couldn't walk back up because she was too frail, right? And if she's sick, well, like maybe not by traditional definitions, but it diminishes her life and and it makes her world smaller. And that's not what we want, right? You want to actually think about the goals. Like how do you help people achieve their health goals? And of course, it includes the absence of disease. And I think that's super important. But you need to look at the whole person.
Okay, so let's talk about the Everlab's process then, because you're helping people achieve this. Talk us about how it works. If someone comes to you and says, I want to do my full health analysis, what do you do with them?
We approach it in the way that we want to basically evolve healthcare. So there are a few core principles that guide what our program looks like. So one of the core principles is we want to be proactive and not reactive. So we would welcome anyone come and do it. Like we have folks in their 20s and 30s and they will still find really consequential things about their health. But the earlier you do it, the lower the cost of avoiding that outcome, right? So we have to be proactive over reactive. The other thing we do is we want to be much more personalized rather than generalized. And personalization means data. And that's how we actually start. So when someone comes through Everlab, you would have we're a doctor-driven service. So you'll meet a doctor, but our team actually gathers a lot of your historical records because data helps us make good decisions, right? Because if you go see a doctor and you have a 10-minute consult, they don't know you really well, they ask you 3 questions, start giving you answers, you're not as confident in the answers. And it's just it's not about the doctor, it's actually about the process. So what we do is our team start to gather up your historical records. We have some folks who have like 20 years of their data that we put onto their app.
Wow.
So then the doctor who sees them can actually look at these trends. And from those trends, we often surface really nuanced insights. So we have folks who've had, a thyroid, just a slow burning thyroid problem for like 7 years. And we just haven't worked it out because the health interactions that she's had were episodic. But then we put it onto one graph and all of a sudden it reveals itself. So actually, I think you have an underactive thyroid if you look at this. And then you corrected that. All of a sudden, a lot of her other problems went away. Like, I have like really dry, itchy skin. I'm really tired. I think I'm just doing too much in my day. My hair is a bit thin and all of a sudden it clicks. And for it to click, you have to have data. So we take a very data-driven approach. You speak to your doctor and tell us about what your goals are because different people have different goals. Some people want to swim 5Ks in the open ocean. Some people say, hey, I've got young kids. It's super important for me to be around, right? My primary goal coming to Everlab is I want to mitigate the risks in my life. Other people say, look, I want to be able to pick up my grandkids and throw them in the air and take them traveling and put suitcases in the overhead compartment and things like that, right? So we want to actually hear what your goals are, layer that on top of the data that we can consolidate for you. And then we would do diagnostics ourselves, wide and deep. Basically, we look at a lot of advanced biomarkers. We do a very extensive blood test. We scan your body using a DEXA scan, so we know really critical information like your visceral fat inside your abdomen, your total body fat, your musculature. And as part of our main program, we would also do physical testing, things like your VO2 max, things like your strength. And we want to put together this picture. The way I describe it is everyone is a 1,000-piece puzzle. We need to piece at least 800 pieces together to actually see what the picture shows. So that if you ask me, what does this picture show? I can give you a much more accurate answer. And the answer that we want to give is, what is the highest return on investment area for you to focus on in your health? And we come up with a strategy. So, you mentioned earlier, there's a lot of ideas about, some people think too much information is not good, or there's all these different channels. It's not actually about that. It's actually about I think information is always good. We collect information, but then we try to hone in on the signals, because now we get more data. So sometimes that's more noise. But I don't think we should be afraid of that. I think it's, as long as we have a process to really narrow it down and say, where's the signal for this particular person? I don't think anyone who comes through Everlab has the exact same profile.
No,
identical twins live different lives, right?
Yeah.
So it has to be personalized. It has to be really data driven. And we want to steer away from this sort of generalized approach, which is, you can just go and do this. And it has to be goal focused. I think our current health system, and this is the way it was designed, once upon a time, fit for purpose, but I think it's becoming less fit for purpose, which is we have a very health activity focused system, whereas we should be health goals focused, which is why the first question we ask you when you come through Everlab is what are your goals? We have goals for you. What are your goals? But we have to get onto the same page, piece this puzzle together, and then interrogate the picture that we see. So, okay, here are the disease pieces, here are the function pieces, here are the performance pieces.
So you're really seeing beneficial results for anyone that comes in. It doesn't matter what age, it doesn't matter whether they're super healthy or not. You're always seeing markers that will be showing you how they can improve their life in some way.
100%. Yeah. And that's also because the people who come through, they are the ones that benefit the most from having this view of their health. And what's also powerful here is we want to put, and this was I thought this was one of the core things that I wanted to achieve when I built Everlab, which is how do we empower people to see this themselves? It's doable, but traditionally it's very, very costly. And which is why Everlab is a tech-driven company, right? The technology will help us do better work by making it more accessible. So my private practice, which is the iteration of Everlab before Everlab, I was basically doing what Everlab's doing today, except it was just very expensive because it took up so much of my time. If you give me 120 pages of results, I will read all of it because I need to piece together this puzzle, but I was doing it manually. Whereas we need to lean into the technologies, things like AI, to actually interpret. We put it into a beautiful dashboard and we give that back to you. So you have control. Your data belongs to you and you get the most from it. And you should, I think of it like you should know how much money you have in the bank. You shouldn't have to go to the branch to, hey, can you tell me again, what is it? And you have an app. You log in, you can see, here are my accounts. So cool. And you should actually have that level of visibility because guess what? Your health is actually a much more valuable asset and capital to you than money is. But we often don't have that visibility.
And then you're getting so much more specific. It's like the guessing game gets cut out from, should I go to the pharmacy and buy X supplements because I feel like this is going to make me feel good? Or actually having the proof in front of us being like, no, you need this amount of milligrams of this supplement, or you should be doing this type of training or whatever to benefit your body type.
Clarity, right? So we call it strategy before tactics. So super interesting is we have a lot of folks who are, I would say, conventionally very successful in their professional lives. And they didn't get successful by guessing. They usually are very strategic. They have goals. They make trade-offs. You approach it in a way that yields success. But what I see very commonly, and I think these are cultural assumptions that we make and cultural behaviors, which is when it comes to health, we almost like seem to be pretty okay with just shooting from the hip to say, oh, so-and-so in my office is taking this supplement. Maybe I'll give it a whirl. Or like, I heard from my cousin that they're doing intermittent fasting. I might give that a go as well.
So true. Right? Guilty.
And it's because there is a willingness to improve your health, but we're trying to do it in a way that has no metrics. Because I can guarantee you, some people, intermittent fasting might be helpful, but for a lot of people, it can actually cause more detriment than
I destroyed myself doing intermittent fasting.
Yeah,
I used to do it, and I just did it for an extended period of time. I would wake up, have a coffee, go to the gym, do a HIIT workout, come home, not eat until lunchtime, and I would do that multiple days of the week, and I ended up completely burning up my cortisol. I was breaking out, was definitely part of my acne journey, which I've spoken about a bit on the podcast, but it was over time, like my energy levels and so many things in my body just declined. My hormones were disrupted, and I put a significant part of that down to intermittent fasting incorrectly, and also not take into consideration that I'm a female and I need to operate differently to, say, my husband or, anyone, the person next to me,
So we want to be guided by your health goals. The decisions have to be guided by data, right? And once you do that, that's how you tease out the signals from the noise. And then we want to help you build a strategy that is in your control. So you can say, like, Steven, where does this strategy come from? Okay, well, look at your app, right? I can show you. This is where the data, this is the reasoning behind it. And we also want to take experimental mindset to say, all right, like, Tess, I think we should try this for this period of time. Here's the dose. You have to be super specific. I think a lot of people go to the doctor, and I think that the doctors are very altruistic and they want to be able to support you, but they neither have the time nor the setup to be able to give you that specific. So of course, sometimes you go to the doctor and they'll say, don't forget to do some dieting and don't forget to do some exercise. Well, that's just way too broad. How do you actually action that? You actually want to get to a point where you say, all right, well, your goal is to improve your VO2 max. You want to improve your VO2 max because it's one of the most important predictors of health span. Yours is a little bit low because we've tested it. So we want to actually toggle your health investment towards improving this number. And this is how you do it. This is how many minutes of zone 2 training that you want to do. And we want to factor that in with your life to say, what do you prefer? Do you like being on a treadmill or do you like being on a bike? If you like being on a treadmill, here's a protocol for you to do.
Great.
And how do we get the biggest return on investment, which is like everyone's busy. We have family, we have kids, we have work, we have, no one has enough hours in the day. So how do we help you? And this is where I think strategy and tactics come in. We want to then focus your actions to be very specific and to be very high yield. To say, like, all right, this is how much incline you put on your treadmill. You want to hit this heart rate. And that's how you get the biggest return on investment. Because some people say, like, do you go to the gym? Yeah, I go to the gym. What do you do at the gym? Well, I do a slow walk on the treadmill and then I sauna for 10 minutes and I'm off. Well, you put in the time, you drove there, you pack your bag, but you're not really getting
I feel like we all know that person. Like, goes to the gym.
Getting the ROI.
What do you do at the gym?
Yeah, like my father-in-law, like, he's like, I go to the gym.
Yeah.
And I was like, what are you doing at the gym? So, well, I, just soak in the spa for a bit. I go for a sauna and then I just do like 5-10 minutes of walking.
It's like the going to the gym action is like contributing to the health factor. I'm like, I don't really think it's contributing that much. But
it's not about ticking boxes. It's not about ticking activity boxes. It's actually about measuring outcome. So nobody goes to work and go, went to work, tick. No, you actually need to look at your paycheck, right? You need to look at how your bank account's moving, right? You need to look at your investment portfolio and say, how much money did I make? I don't know. I went to work though, right? So, we actually have to think about the outcomes a lot more, and you can't do that without the right data and also without access to the right tools.
Yes.
So, Everlab, we also use a variety of like medical tools that are often inaccessible to a lot of people, but these are technologies that exist that can really help us with that clarity, right? So we do some advanced scans like whole body screening. We do advanced scans like advanced cardiac imaging, CT coronary angiography we can actually look inside your heart and look inside the arteries.
Because cardiovascular disease is such a massive one, isn't it?
Number one killer.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
Number one killer basically worldwide, certainly in Australia. One Australian dies of cardiovascular disease every 12 minutes.
Oh my God, that's huge.
Yeah, this is my area of subspecialties. I do a lot of research in preventative cardiology, how it affects different people, how we predict disease. So Everlab is really designed to try to predict who is at higher risk than we think. And the problem we want to try and solve here is also fighting against assumptions. Because a lot of folks are like, I'm lean, I exercise, I have no symptoms, therefore I'm healthy, therefore I don't have a lot of cardiovascular risk. Well, that could not be further from the truth, right? So we have folks who are like super active. Two of them are like, that just come off the top of my head, like two of our members are triathletes, but for a variety of reasons, they actually have disease. One of them actually had bypass surgery for it.
Wow.
He was 48 when he had bypass surgery. And at the time, he was actively competing in triathlons. So I think this comes back to the personalization part, which is, we will have to be data-driven and we have to try to fight against some of these assumptions.
What do you think are the biggest things that are contributing to poor cardiovascular health in our society? Is any of it genetic? Is it predominantly lifestyle? What is it?
I think there's the two big drivers are, number one is genetics. I think we do genetic testing for people. One of the clinical trials that I run at the University of Sydney is using genetics to try to predict who's at high risk. Genetics is something you can't change, but it is something that if you have the insights, you can change what you do to mitigate the risks. So genetics is definitely a big part. The other part is not so much, I wouldn't say it's directly from lifestyle, but it's indirectly from lifestyle, because one of the biggest problems we see that drives almost all chronic disease is poor metabolic health. So we call it cardiometabolic risks. So I think when I say metabolic health, a lot of people think, what jumps to mind? They think, oh, hormones, or they think, oh, like diabetes. Those are the like sort of last stops on that train. So like 1 in 2 people in Australia, and that's a conservative estimate, 1 in 2 people in Australia actually have suboptimal metabolic health performance.
Wow, that's huge.
So whether if it's having excess fat, whether it's having excess visceral fat, whether it's having insulin resistance, which is sort of the early signs of diabetes, those things, it's like fuel on the fire when you're driving things like chronic disease. And one of those diseases is putting plaque inside your arteries and cardiovascular disease. And that is a societal problem. So it is lifestyle, it's what we eat, and it's how we live our lives. In what way has life become more sedentary? It's work from home. It's sitting down for too long. It's all of the above. It's how we stock our supermarket shelves.
Yeah, I like the tip of only sticking to the exterior of the supermarket. Like, don't walk through the aisles, just get what's on the exterior. Get your fresh fruit and veg, your meat, your milks, and get out of there.
Yeah. So like, ultra processed foods is one of the big drivers. I think one day we're going to look back and we're going to say, we can't believe we put this stuff on our shelves.
Bodies. It'll be like cigarettes.
Marketing them as kids, to kids, right? So it'll be like cigarettes. I think one day we're going to look back at ultra processed foods the way we look at cigarettes today, to say, well, can't believe doctors were recommending this stuff, right? I can't believe it was just normal for people to be smoking. I think one day we'll look back and say, I can't believe we let our kids eat this stuff. Definitely.
So talk to us about visceral fat, because you just touched on that. And I know that that's something that's really important and I feel like can be overlooked.
It's one of these big blind spots. Visceral fat, also known as toxic fat or radioactive fat. Basically, it's fat that's inside the abdominal cavity. So that's very different to like, I think my belly's a bit flabby, like I can touch it. It's something that you cannot touch. It's within the abdominal cavity. So it sits right next to your intestines, your internal organs, your kidney, your pancreas. We see it very clearly on abdominal scans that we do, and we can measure it on a DEXA body composition study. So the danger of that is that it directly increases your risk of metabolic disease and attributes to gut inflammation as well. And the blind spot is we also see a lot of folks come through Everlab and they're quite lean, but they can still have a lot of visceral fat, particularly men. So the normal, we call it the normogram. So like generally men have more visceral fat than women. Probably one of the reasons why women live longer. Right. And you can actually have like be very lean, but have excess visceral fat. So we have a few folks who come through, their total body fat might even be like 23% or something. So if you look at them, lean, active, but have more than 1 kilo of visceral fat within the abdominal cavity. And then when we work on that, a lot of the disease risk, a lot of things go down. So they're like, oh, why are these biomarkers not going well? Why do I have like inflammation? Why do I get sick? Quite often.
So can BMI be misleading then?
BMI is super misleading. Yeah. So at Everlab, we actually, I don't think about BMI at all.
Wow.
I barely think about weight.
Yeah.
Right? So weight is a composite number, just like BMI is a composite number. So BMI is like, we should phase that out because what it does is it overestimates. So folks who are very muscular, they're going to have a high BMI. That means nothing, right? And folks who have a low BMI, but if you're under-muscled and or what we call a sarcopenic, or just if you're under-muscled, you also fly under the radar, but you might have much worse metabolic health than someone with a higher BMI. So it's like, I think we should phase that out. Weight, it's easy to measure. You step on some scales. I think society-wide, we also index on the things that we can measure easily. So stepping on your scales, I don't think that's a great experience for a lot of people as well, to say, oh, they sort of tie their success to weight or their self-worth to weight. And I think it's super important. I think it's good to, it's not a bad thing to want to look nice, but we have to separate that from like health in some ways. So it's not the skinnier you are, the better, because I see that quite often with people who, for instance, if you do like a fairly radical diet, anyone can actually lose weight. It's not that difficult. It's actually being healthy and keeping it off, because there is this vicious cycle of folks who, if you starve yourself, you will lose weight, but you will lose muscle faster than you lose fat. If you're in a state of discomfort and distress where you're undernourished, you're not very happy, you're functioning not particularly well, maybe like you were when you were on intermittent fasting, right? But those experiences and driving up your cortisol and driving up the stress levels actually paradoxically causes more deposition of visceral fat as well.
Because your body panics, right?
Your body
so it's not storing
exactly,
fat.
Yeah. You actually end up storing more visceral fat, but then your metabolic rate actually drops because you've lost more muscle than you lost fat. And once you then fall off the wagon, you actually catch up very, very quickly, and you're worse off than when you started because you basically put your fat back on, but you lost a bunch of muscle.
It's so interesting. I want to just backtrack a little bit to when you were talking about GPs, because like obviously once you've gotten all this data of someone, it's like, who are we then getting to analyze it? Because I know like my personal experience was I used to take get a lot of my blood work done with my GP. But when I started seeing a naturopath in my early 20s and they started looking at some of my blood work, they were like, wow, these levels are like not okay. Like there are like issues here. But my GP had been like, no, like it's safe. It's within range. And I know you talk about this a little bit. So what's the importance of having like the right person reading your data?
That's a great question. I think it's less so about the right person, more so about the right process.
Right.
So I actually work at the college of, the Royal Australian College of GPs. So I'm on the faculty council there. One of the things that I think a lot about is how do we empower GPs to be able to deliver more outcomes, right? So I don't think it's so much about the individual, because I think doctors are usually very altruistic and they want to do more, but they're also under the pump, right? So you're booking 10, 15-minute long appointments. And they also don't have the great tools to actually do this. And if you layer on top this culture of, it's like when I was in hospital, right? I was trained to deal with crises. And if you don't have a crisis, I'm all of a sudden much less interested in what's happening, because I work in intensive care, I work in hospital. So like dealing with crisis is actually what I do. So if you don't have a crisis, like that's not my goal, right? I think doctors today still have the remnants of that, which is if you're not actively sick, right? If there's, I need to make sure there's nothing killing you right now because that would be a crisis. And if it's not that, no problem is okay, right? Whereas a lot of problems are much more subtle and you do need to pause and think more deeply and piece all the puzzles together, but that takes time and effort as well. One thing is if you've seen a doctor before and you've had a lot of like blood tests before, consolidate it all into one place. That's why we painstakingly built out these processes where we can actually put all your data together, put it into an app so you can see. So you can all of us see, oh, well, I can see the trends of my cholesterol. I can see the trends of my like blood work, white cell count, kidney function, and then empowers you to actually look at it and say, oh, like I'm trying to layer this on top with like what I was feeling during these periods of my life, right? So the folks who've been pregnant, for example, like you can look at the iron levels go up and down. I could look at someone's iron level like chart. If you give me like 10 years, I can tell you what's happening in your life basically. Oh, like here you got an iron infusion, here you're probably pregnant, and so it's, I think it's having the data consolidated in one place is really important. And then the next thing is how do I don't think it's your job to change what your doctor does. I guess it's part of my job to change what your doctor does in my role in terms of like as a medical educator. It's the government's job almost to say like how can we drive more outcome-driven health. I don't think we're taking those steps right now with the way that like health is being funded. And at an individual level, it's empowering yourself to say, right, like this is how I advocate for myself.
Yeah.
This is how I can interpret my results myself. Right before we started chatting, you were telling me, like, put your results into ChatGPT. Yeah. You know what? It does a pretty good job.
Yeah.
Right? I don't think we should shy away from these things because guess what? Our patients are doing it. Right? And what we need to do is not to say, don't do that. What we need to say is, I did it as well. And my process is one that can yield more insights, right? So let's come together. We have to get onto the same team, right? You have to get aligned on your goals and then work towards that. So if you see a naturopath, it's about like, it doesn't matter who it is. It's about getting on the same goals. So what do you want? You want nicer, you want to fix your acne, right? You want to fix your energy levels. Let's get onto the same page and then look at the data because there's often a lot of holes in the data, right? So yes, we can grab people's historical records, but most of those, we probably haven't ordered the right tests, right? There's still so many blind spots. So a lot of people have had their blood sugar checked. That just doesn't tell us as much, right? I'm more interested in what your insulin level is because that is the early markers. I'm interested in what your visceral fat is. With cardiovascular health, I'm interested in what your apolipoprotein B is, your lipoprotein A is, and some of those tests are just not very accessible. Some of those tests, you can't get it on Medicare. The doctors don't know. A lot of doctors haven't maybe like read up on it. They don't know what it is. And we need to piece all these data points together to make better decisions, right? Coming back to the strategy and tactics aligned towards your goals.
So what do you think are the top tests that everyone should be doing?
Top tests that everyone should be doing. I think everyone should know their body composition. So when you think about weight or BMI, like forget about those things. I think you want to think about what your body composition is. What is your percentage body fat? What is your visceral fat? What is your muscle mass? Right. So a lot of folks come through and they say, look, I want to lose fat. I'll say, hold on, let's have a look. I actually think the priority for you before you want to lose fat is to build up more muscle because you are actually more under muscled than you are over fat. Right. And here is the consequence of that. So it's
what
our job.
What are the consequences of poor muscle health?
Poor muscle health has lots of immediate consequences and long-term consequences, right? The immediate consequence is having strong musculature is one of the biggest supporting factors of having good metabolic function because your muscles basically burn more energy, can chew up more immediate release sugars and energy. So sometimes at the gym, you see these posters is like do a half an hour workout and like burn energy for the rest of the day. That's actually kind of true, right? So it delivers immediate results in terms of managing your sugar flow throughout the day. And having big peaks and troughs in your sugar levels across the day can then affect how you feel. So some people get like, they get the afternoon slump after lunch. Right?
That was
like,
me.
Getting a bit sleepy, right?
Yeah.
Especially after you fasted for so long, your body's actually like, hit me with some sugar, hit me with it now. And once we hit you with that sugar, and when I say sugar, I mean like it could be like carbohydrates, could be
talking healthy sugars here.
and then you're like, oh gosh, I'm super sleepy. I get really this foggy, need to take a nap feeling. Often those are peaks and troughs. So there's nothing. It's not that your sugar levels need to be as low as possible, but it's the sudden changes can really affect you day to day and affects your performance. So it's function and it's performance. But it actually helps regulate that if you have good, strong musculature. So that's the immediate, value.
Yeah.
But the way I think about muscle is also it's almost like having a bank account. You just want to bank it. And it's like investing. The earlier you do it, the cheaper it is. And we actually have studies that like if you're in your 30s, the cost to build up 1 gram of muscle is just lower. You might only need like 3 grams of protein ingested. Whereas when you get to 50, it's like 5 or 6 grams. Right. So, and when you get older, it's like the lady that I spoke about who, walks down to the beach and can't get back up because there's stairs. Sarcopenia is one of the biggest drivers of poor musculoskeletal function. And if you want to live a rich, functional life later in life, function is really built around muscle, right? Function is built around good joints, strong musculature, so you can do all the things that you want to do. That is then correlated with a lower risk of dementia as well.
Wow.
So it's a really strong factor that I think we overlook, and we overlook it because there's not great ways to measure it usually.
Yeah. Same with bone density, correct? Because I've heard this is a huge marker, I think maybe especially with like women, but like on longevity for us.
Yeah. So typically people don't get their bone density checked until they're 70, and I think that's just way too late, right? So a lot of genetic ancestries have, a lot of ethnic ancestries have high risks of like low bone density. So for instance, if you're English-Irish ancestry, your risk of osteoporosis is a little bit higher than certain other ancestries. Bone loss can start from like 30 for women. So you actually want to capture those things.
That's
and
young.
It's another one of these things that's invisible until something happens. So you don't want to wait till you had a minor fall and then broke your ankle and then work it out. We actually want to work it out prospectively and in a proactive way. It's very easy for us to actually get this number, and also picks up a lot of blind spots. So some people, they have a malabsorptive disorder. So they think, like I'm eating all this stuff. But if they're not absorbing all their micronutrients, they can have osteoporosis earlier in life.
Wow.
Hormones is a big driver, particularly perimenopause, menopause, big driver of like low bone density. So these are all blind spots that we want to make sure we capture.
What would be causing our body to not be absorbing things? Like, is there something that's triggering that, or?
So I think 2 broad categories here. Number one is the quality of the food, right? The micronutrients.
That's
like
a huge one.
if everyone did what you did and just shop on the outer rim of the supermarket, I think people would do better.
Or straight to the organic grocer or market or whatever.
Just get fresh produce. Processed foods definitely doesn't help that. And the way that it doesn't help is it actually drives a lot of gut health dysfunction. So that is things like gut inflammation, and that then drives things like malabsorptive disorders. There's also actually disease entities like celiac disease. You can have like gastritis. You can have inflammation anywhere along your gut, and that's made worse by modern life. So the scariest thing from that view is the 2 things I think about with gut health is number one is gastrointestinal cancers. So bowel cancer is now the deadliest cancer for young Australians.
Yes, that's mind blowing. I heard.
It's and
so what's triggering that? Like,
I think so. There's a lot of theories around it. I think we're going to get more confidence on that. But so far, we even think about what your mother was exposed to environmentally when you were still in utero, when you were being carried during pregnancy. But then modern life is also things like exposure to heavy metals, pollution, microplastics, and then you have the processed foods, combining that with modern life, which is more sedentary lifestyles. All of those things combined, I think, is driving this massive surge in solid organ tumors led by bowel cancer, which is really scary. You know, I look at these stats. I've been banging on about this for years. I was like, look, you know, we need to be much more cautious with this. So at Everlab, we comb through people's family history. We think about their lifestyle. We ask about their gut health. We would have a very low threshold to recommend someone have a gastroscopy or colonoscopy to get that checked out. Obviously, you need to discuss that with your doctor in terms of like making the right decision. But overall, it's very safe. And I think it's really important that we try to catch these things early. And at Everlab, we actually scoped out all the like really great providers to make sure that, you know, if you do get it done, we get someone fantastic to do it. I also see these cases, you know, like personally, we have Everlab members who have come across. I think a couple of weeks ago, we had a 38-year-old woman, 2 kids, stage 2 bowel cancer.
Wow.
Right. And if you ask around, a lot of people are now saying, oh, I actually know someone who had bowel cancer. And they're usually not the, you know, like someone who's 70. I think a lot of people, if you ask around, they oh, I know someone who was young.
Cancer's everywhere. It's quite terrifying. Yeah.
Solid organ tumors have gone up by 80% in the past 30 years in young people.
Wow.
And I think that's really frightening. But also, I don't like to be, you know, we shouldn't have sort of fear or pain-based actions. We should have opportunity-based actions, which is, yes, these are the stats and no, they're not great, but we want to tackle it head on and we want to be empowered to do something about it, which is, here are the ways that we're going to do things slightly differently.
Yeah. And definitely taking into consideration, like our lifestyle and the things that are around us. I actually was hearing, I don't know if you know Dr. Zach Bush, he was doing a seminar in Melbourne a few years ago I was listening to, and he said that celiac disease wasn't really prevalent like pre-90s. And he saw a direct correlation between when glyphosate or Roundup was introduced in 1991 and 12 months later, there was a huge, what was basically like when celiac disease became on the rise and all of a sudden was everywhere. And he's like, I just think it honestly starts within our soil, like where we're getting our produce, how our produce is being grown, and that's impacting our gut, our microbiome, inflammation, that's therefore affecting like disease. It's pretty crazy.
Our gut is technically on the outside of our body, right? So externally we have skin, but internally it's a hollow tube. You know, it's actually the way, so your liver basically never interacts with the outside world, but your skin does, your lungs do, because you breathe air and it comes out, and your gut is basically a hollow tube and it interacts with the external world, right? It depends on what you put in there. And it's a rise of bowel cancer. It's a rise of inflammatory conditions such as celiac disease, but then there are functional aspects as well. So it's not just your inflammatory bowel, irritable bowel syndromes. There's inflammatory bowel diseases like Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis, but there's also your irritable bowel syndromes. And your gut health actually drives a lot of inflammation. And you actually have to nurture your gut with prebiotics and fiber and sometimes probiotics to try to balance things out.
So why prebiotics over probiotics?
Prebiotics, so for instance, like one of the supplements that I take is psyllium husk, which is a naturally occurring fiber. And the healthy bacteria in your gut needs to be fed, it needs to be nurtured, right? And then the way that your gut bacteria is nurtured interacts with the way the lining of your gut is quote unquote healthy and functional. And the healthy functional barrier between your gut and the food actually helps regulate things like sugar absorption, things like inflammation. So you actually want to feed the healthy bacteria in your gut with whole foods as well. So, you know, you want to have a really rich, you know, like a fiber, fresh vegetable and fiber rich diet to nurture your gut. And in fact, the sequence of how you eat things is important. So
really?
Our dietitian will tell you, so all right, like if you eat, if you go have a 3-course meal, so you have a salad, you have a bread roll, you have a protein like a steak or chicken, and then you have a dessert. What is the optimal sequence that you eat the same thing, right? So, you know.
So what is it?
it's salad, protein, bread roll, dessert.
Oh, wow. So bread roll, like towards the end.
Yeah, because
we always start with the bread roll.
We always start with bread roll because it's cultural. But what you should be doing is actually you want to start with the fresh salad and fresh vegetables and fruits to actually nurture your gut and get your gut ready, right? To say, all right, like let's make sure you're well hydrated. You nurture the as prebiotic to nurture the gut microbiome. And then you have the protein, because I think protein is actually really important to have. A lot of people are under, not having enough protein, but we're having too much carbs. The bread roll is something to enjoy. I think, people don't need as many carbs as you might think, depending on what you're doing later in the day, etc. So it's for your enjoyment. You do that last. But if you did it the entire opposite way, that's when you're going to get get tired more easily, because your gut is just primed to absorb a lot of that sugar very, very quickly. So these are all minor, sort of easy to action things, but you want to think about the theory behind it. But gut health is super important. We actually recently introduced a microbiome and gut health analysis for some folks who deal with these things, whether they have irritable bowel syndrome or they find that their gut is just not quite right. So we actually have the means of testing your poo, basically. Like I went through this myself and I found some really interesting findings as well to say, is there any serious problems like blood in your stools that would warrant a colonoscopy? Are there signs of inflammation? Are there signs of malabsorption? And then the general well-being of your gut, which is made up of basically billions and trillions of bacteria. And you have to live in harmony, right, with this. And in many ways dictates what your gut performance and gut function is like.
Because they're kind of saying now that everything kind of starts in the gut. Would you agree with that?
I would say so. Yeah. I think often you'll find that these things are all cyclical. So for instance, a lot of folks we find at Everlab, it might not start with the gut, but it might start with their sleep. It might start with their inflammation. It might start with their stress. It might start with exercise. So all of these things are good. The hard part is actually ranking them. How do you stack rank what this person should do for the biggest ROI? Because often if you get the top 3 things right, the bottom 7 things might naturally occur. So how do you help people make the best decisions to get the most out of their health actions? Because
what if someone is feeling like, this all seems like a lot. I don't know if I have the power to change myself. I feel like I've done so much damage in my 20s, or maybe I'm so worried about my genetics because my parents had cancer or my grandparents passed away from cancer. What would you say to that person?
I would say, I think it's actually good that you're thinking about it. We want to change the mindset to one of fear or pain to one of opportunity. I've thought of the fact that I have cancer in my family. Therefore, I'm going to be proactive. I'm going to take control. I'm going to go through a process where I can be empowered to say, yes, I have family history of cancer and no, I can't change that. But yes, I can go through a process where I can minimize my risk, come up with the right screening process that's custom to me, that gives me the confidence to minimize my disease risk.
So say someone does have, say, cancer in their genes. I'm very interested in the field of epigenetics. How much of that do we have control over? Are we switching, do we have the power to switch our genes on and off? Or is there somewhat of a risk factor that's a lucky dip? You might just get this because your parents had it.
I think it is a risk calculation. Some of them we can test for and give you concrete numbers. For example, if you're a carrier of the BRCA gene, BRCA 1 or 2, we can really calculate very accurately what your risk of breast cancer or ovarian cancer might be. And with that, empowered with that knowledge, said, is this good? No, it's not good. But what's worse than not good is you not knowing about it and the consequences occur. So by being proactive, you should feel empowered to say, I'm going to make some decisions here, right? Other people might get a mammogram. I'm going to get a breast MRI instead, right? Other people get this checked, on average once every 2 years. I might get it checked every year. And then the epigenetic part is basically how your genes dictate how you interact with your environment. So there's a bit of a difference between genes and epigenetics, genetics and epigenetics. Genetics is much more coded. So BRCA gene, that's a genetic risk factor. Epigenetics is basically how your body might switch certain things on and off based on your environment. And this is an area that's super interesting that we're definitely going to need a bit more research on. But coming back to what we do know, which is we can be proactive and come up with a plan for folks who are at risk of certain diseases. Some of them might be confronting information. We find folks with brain aneurysms. We find folks with blockages in the arteries. And like I said, some of them will proceed to needing treatment. Some of them will proceed to having maybe even a stent or open heart surgery. But that is much, much better than the outcome of having a heart attack.
Are you saying, I remember seeing a stat on your website, 1 in 3 patients discover early signs of possible future disease. Is that correct?
Oh, 100%.
Wow.
Yeah. I would say that's a conservative estimate, actually.
Wow.
You know, so everyone has disease risks, and that is independent to your age. We have a lot of young folks come through who have like the risk of a 50-year-old or beyond, and vice versa. We have folks who like, come get yourself checked out. You think you're healthy. Prove it, right? And you come through and like, well, actually, you're fantastic, right? So, you know, like all your disease risks are really low.
That was a Sean, unfortunately.
Yeah, so
not unfortunately, positively, but he just came home on his high horse like, well, my results are all pretty amazing. My VO2 max is like in the top few percent. Like,
and I mean, that is very powerful, right?
Yeah.
And that is very powerful. And you know, I think people should also be rewarded for the good news. Like, you know, Everlab is not a come find out the bad news. It's come find out the opportunities. Opportunities for you to be healthier. And we will find numbers which are celebration worthy. Right? So if your VO2 max is in the top quartile for your gender and age, you are 4 times less likely to die of all-cause mortality compared to someone in the bottom.
Wow, that's awesome.
Those multipliers can be stronger than things like smoking is deleterious, right? So I think seeing these numbers is also not just empowering, but encouraging. So Sean might be like, oh, right, great. I want to maintain this. What am I doing to maintain this?
Yeah.
But we'll also find other opportunities. What else should we be working on? And a lot of folks then, and this is the continuum of going from medicine to wellness, because the outcome is, how can we help you live a better life? I think the baseline is, how do we shield you from disease risks that could cut your life short? But then the next step is, how can we deep dive further and find opportunities for you to refine your activities so that, you know, maybe you would like to run a marathon. How can we support you there? What are the trade-offs? Because some people will say, actually, do you have to run a marathon? Because like what we want to work on for you is you don't need more. You don't need to index more on aerobic performance. Actually, we need to work on your musculature. Actually, we need to work on your sleep or inflammation or gut health.
That's such a good point, because obviously Sean said that next year he wants to do a marathon. He's like, you should do it with me. And I've always wanted to do one. But then I was also like, but that's also not my goal for next year. Like, I want to get my body into a state where I'm like optimal fertility again and rebuilding like strong like muscle. That's a really important goal of mine. Correct. I don't want to say BMI, but building muscle and building strength again and making myself feel
body
strong.
Composition for the outcomes that you want. So, you know, we help a lot of people have these fertility discussions. And how do you prepare your body for it? It's such an exciting thing to do, but often it comes with a bit of like nervousness, right? We also see a lot of folks who have had complications of pregnancy. For example, things like gestational diabetes, high blood pressure in pregnancy. How does that affect your life elsewhere? Because often I think with pregnancies and fertility, people see it in an isolated bucket, whereas actually if we have all the data, we can string all of the things together to say, how does your, you know, hormones affect your fertility and affects your, you know, cardiometabolic processes, and how does that affect your day-to-day life? And it could impact things like, you know, inflammation, or it could impact things like, you know, things like sleep or mood. If we have the right data structure, we can actually start, you know, teasing the signals and stringing all the things together. And once we do that, it's like, all right, like this will help us make good decisions. We're also not a service where you tell us what you want to do. Like, yes, we'll do it. We're here to advocate for you through a professional lens, through a doctor-led service. I liken it to, you know, we're like your management consultant.
That's all right. I just glanced over there and forgot what my question was going to be. Hang on. What was I going to ask? Oh, yeah. So when I was pregnant, that's when I became really conscious about the quality of supplements that I was taking. Yeah. We were speaking off mic before about the importance of getting correct supplements because of certain things you've seen and heavy metals and toxicity that you've seen with people taking certain supplements. But you're also correlating that to medications and stuff that we might buy at the pharmacy. Can you elaborate on like the importance of the quality of supplements and things that we're ingesting?
Yeah, for sure. I think coming back to our conversation, what we put in our bodies is important. Your gut is basically is interacting with the outside world, and it's really important to think about, right? So I think it's actually about visibility. So at Everlab, the way we approach it is when we think about micro and macronutrients that we put into our bodies, supplements is part of that. We actually have a process where a lot of folks take various supplements. We would review that for you against the evidence in terms of like what is valuable and what is not. But then there are real world considerations. So the example that I gave is if I go to the fruit shop and buy a banana and eat it, I know I've eaten 100% banana. But if I then go to the chemist and buy banana extract, I take it. Well, there's probably some banana related things in there, but it's gone through a manufacturing process. There's going to be fillers in there as well, a variety of types, because you can't really press a banana into a pill. Like, it's going to have various types of fillers as part of the manufacturing process. That applies to general pharmaceuticals as well. And I think it's important that we have confidence in that because you know what a banana is, you know how it's grown. We don't necessarily know how supplements are made, and it's going to be very difficult to find out, which is why trust and credibility is really important. So the majority of the work is working out, number one, what is the right micronutrient for you? And then the next question is, how can supplement help here? So as an example for me, I take psyllium husk. We say, well, why don't you just eat the similar amount of soluble fiber in your diet? I can do that, but I don't have the time. I'm going to be eating all the time. It's hard to prepare. Supplements by definition is to supplement your whole foods approach to macronutrients. But it can definitely deliver higher doses, more refined ways, and basically a shortcut to getting enough of what you need. So some folks might be on a magnesium supplement. Yes, you can get it from almonds and like various things, but you're going to be eating a lot, right? So how can we actually make the right choices to say this is a good supplement to take? So for instance, the most common supplements that we recommend at Everlab, creatine, whey protein isolate, psyllium husk, magnesium, zinc sometimes. It really depends on the person.
And whey protein over a plant-based protein.
Whey protein is a bit more bioavailable. So plant-based protein is still a great alternative. I typically reserve the plant-based protein recommendations for folks who might be vegan. Okay. So you want it to be, there's protein in this protein, so you want to think about the quantity, which is, and various foods as well. So we will give you a food chart to say, all right, like chicken breast has, I think it's 29 grams of protein per 100 grams of skinless chicken breast, or like a steak might be this much, or fish might be this much, or prawns might be this much. But then so well, actually I want to get 80 grams of protein a day. I really can't stomach that much prawns. Of course, like find the shortcuts. And then once you find the shortcuts, then it's quality, right? So how do you make sure you have a good quality bar? And the quality bar for me is reading the label, having it sourced from a place that you're confident of. I'm not saying you can't buy it off the internet, but like what country is it manufactured in? Do they have high quality standards? Do you trust this provider? I think all of those things. Where do they source their raw materials? Is it like Australia, New Zealand, or is it like mystery meats, right? So like we don't want those cases. We have had folks at Everlab who were taking some supplements from overseas. I think they bought it off the internet, and they had evidence of like heavy metal, not toxicity, but exposure.
That's crazy.
And I think they're the cautious things because it might come in a nice packaging, but you can't see it. It's not it's not a salad. It's not a banana. So I would use it with caution.
Is this the same for pharmaceuticals? Like, should we be going home brand or?
I think everyone needs to make those calls themselves.
Okay.
In Australia, we do have a very high quality bar for things like generics. Personally, I still go for the branded options because for me, the cost differential is not big enough for me to make that change. I don't think it costs that much more to buy branded. And the main reason is the branded pharmaceutical companies, this big pharma, they're incentivized to produce really, really high quality preparations of the medication because they have a bigger brand, or and I think they need to protect their. There's more to lose for them in terms of like poor quality or bad optics or things like that. So I haven't. A lot of these are industry secrets. Like we don't actually know how it's produced, but they're the considerations that you want to make. So I don't think the immediate thing for folks to think about is like, let me switch everything from generic to branded. It's actually think about that chain of decision making and think, do I need these pharmaceuticals at all? Because one of the things we do at Everlab is if we optimize your health behaviors and come up with the right plan, we often de-prescribe. In fact, often a lot of folks come through Everlab, we de-prescribe their supplements as well because they have particular health goals and are like, I'm taking these like 8 supplements. That could actually be risky, even if the quality is really good. Because, for example, we catch a lot of people with vitamin B6 poisoning.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because a lot of people might buy a over-the-counter magnesium product, and so I want to get some magnesium. But if you don't read sometimes if you don't read the label, you don't realize what's in it. So a lot of supplements actually have vitamin B6 as a filler. So then if you take a Baraka and you take a magnesium and you take a vitamin B group, some multivitamin, some of our members would catch them taking like 5,000-6,000% of their recommended daily intake.
Oh my God, I'm panicking now. I'm going to go take my supplement drawer.
Yeah, I mean, look, the easiest thing to do, right? Just have a look at the label.
Yeah.
You don't need to read the label on like celery or carrots, right? But these things you want to read the label on. Say, all right, like, could I be getting too much? I use vitamin B6 as an example because if you take too much of it, that can actually cause side effects and cause neurological side effects where you can damage the nerves in your fingers.
Oh my God, it's so fascinating. So what about for you, aside the psyllium husk, do you have like a daily non-negotiable that you're doing for overall health and longevity?
I have 2 non-negotiables, which is when I wake up, I have my psyllium husk, but the preparation also matters because I've recommended people take psyllium husk. Yeah, I'll take it. And then they end up buying tablets. Also, then you're doing it wrong because like we want to use the psyllium husk. I take it in powder form because it's a forcing function for me to also get my hydration.
Because you do it with water.
You do it with water. And if you don't put enough water in, it gets a bit clumpy. So I always have to put a lot of water in. That actually helps me. It's a forcing function for me to actually do it properly.
That's a good one. See, I used to stupidly put it in my smoothies and then it would make my smoothie go all thick and gross. And it was so bad. I was like, I can't do this. What do I consume this with?
So I think it's not just what it is, but how you take it. Making sure you're adequately hydrated. I think that's super, super powerful. And it's also easy. Create your own forcing functions. So it might be as simple as like find a water bottle that you like and make it a 2-liter one, right? So that you don't have to keep getting up and refilling it.
We love our Stanleys.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And you can also jazz it up a little bit. Put a little bit of like lime juice or lemon juice or something like that, just to give it a little bit of extra flavor. It makes it interesting for you. You like it warm, you like it cold. Make it interesting enough for you to adhere to. The other thing that I take sometimes is vitamin D. So you can absolutely get vitamin D from sun. You can get vitamin D from whole foods. Being of Asian ancestry, so my skin doesn't synthesize vitamin D as well. So I take vitamin D supplements and I take it just based on where my vitamin D level is. So I would check it. It's like, it's good. Okay, well, I can wind it back. And that's a great example of where supplements makes things easier. I can get it from whole foods and I just don't have the time to think about it. I can get it from the sun, but I don't want to have to calculate, what's the UV? I don't want to, I don't want to get skin cancer. I want to get vitamin D. Takes all the guesswork out of it. I just have a vitamin D that I take. I take 1,000 units, international units, which most preparations are. I take it once a day. And that's how supplements, I think, are supposed to be used. It's supposed to give you what you want and give you a bit of a practical shortcut to do it. And that's basically all I take. I take some magnesium as well on occasion. If I don't have, if I'm not getting enough from whole foods, particularly like times of like when you're stressed and, you know, like one thing that I can't really control is workload, right? And then I need to think about like how I portion my day. And sometimes everyone has to make these trade-offs, and supplement is one of these tactics that helps you feed into this broader strategy. So you're in control. So like I'm a lot less fit than I am than I was like 2 years ago, because building this business is very challenging, right? It takes a lot of time, and I have to make these trade-offs. So my trade-off is, you know, would I rather go to the gym, or would I rather spend some time with my kids? And I pick my kids, knowing that like there is a bit of a cost there, which is like, you know, my VO2 max is probably not as good as it was like 18 months ago.
But isn't that reassuring for the listeners, knowing that we are going to go through peaks and troughs in our life, and we can reverse things, we can improve things, like we have the power to allow that work might be more stressful at different periods, but we can take control of our health again, and how that will have impacted us 100%. At times.
It's a game of confidence, and confidence should come from data, not from guessing. So I have the confidence to say, I've done whole body screening, you know, I've done all my like advanced markers, I've had physical assessments, I have all my data on my app, so I can see it, and I say, all right, like when is my next blood test? Because I don't have time to think about that, right? Someone's here to quarterback my health. And it's so interesting. I mean, I'm the founder of this business, and I do this for a living. But if you ask me, Steven, what's your magnesium? I don't know, right? I have to look somewhere, because it's not front of mind for a lot of people. You want to have someone who's in your corner to say, right, like I know what to do, and someone's going to tell me when to do it. And I have the confidence that I can make these trade-offs, because some people can't, right? Some people say, I'm sorry, you have to, the cost of you not doing this is higher than it is for Steven. Like I'm actually pretty lucky, like, you know, genetically and whatnot. I have certain diseases in my family. Like I have a lot of inflammatory conditions in my family. I have a lot of autoimmune conditions. So gut health is a big focus of mine. I've done our microbiome assessment. You know, I take psyllium husk. I watch what I eat, what types of protein. So those things are really a big focus for me, because like both my parents have autoimmune conditions. So I need to be more cautious of that. Whereas someone else might need to be cautious of something else. So you want to be personalized. Life does go in peaks and troughs, right? Sometimes, and that's the reality of life. Work gets busy, work gets better. Sometimes there's family stresses, right? Sometimes it's not. Like life is not very linear, but you want to have a process where it can adjust to that irregularity of life and still give you the confidence to capture opportunities, so that you can proceed with positivity.
I'm honestly so excited to do mine, and then I'm going to compare my results to Sean.
nothing like a leaderboard either. Yeah,
I love a little competition. Honestly, so great. I'm going to put all the details in the show notes, so that anyone who wants to take part in your protocol can. I know you've got different packages available. How long roughly is like the time frame of testing if someone's doing? Is it like a full year it takes? Is it a few months? Like what can people expect?
We've built it out. I always want Everlab to be really accessible to people. So your initial stage is $299. You have a long consult with, it's like seeing the doctor. It's doctor-led. You have a long consult with one of our longevity trained doctors. We start to consolidate your records. You have access to the app. You can then see a lot of the specific services that might be relevant to you, and your doctor will guide you towards those things as well.
Awesome.
And we have our flagship protocol program, which is a year-long membership program, which includes advanced blood tests, body composition, bone density, media retesting, food tracking, nutrition consult, physical assessment, VO2 max. So we put it all together, and it might sound like a lot, but one thing that's really important for us is we also economize this, because people are very busy. You can book everything in your app, depending on what is most convenient for you. Because I know that we're competing with other priorities in your life, right? So I always wanted to make it super accessible. I wanted to take the what do I do now out of your experiences, because people actually don't understand the health system super well.
No.
Right? So the care navigational aspect is really important for us too.
So good. Thank you so much for joining me today. I love ending my episodes by asking our guests to leave a little verbal entry in the Tess Talks diary. So it's just like one lasting piece of advice that you think is important for people to take home.
It's never too early to be proactive about your health.
Love that. I'm so excited for the future of health with people like you leading the way. It's looking like a very positive future.
Thank you. That's very kind.
Thanks so much, Steven.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for listening. If you loved the episode, please subscribe, rate, and review. It honestly means so much and helps to keep these conversations going. And I'd love to connect with you. You can message me on Instagram or TikTok, and I've left all the details from the episode in the show notes below. I'll see you next week.